Hello friends, hi, this is Dr. Tirath Gill. I want to talk to you today about prison reform. And when you think about prisons, it's a complex set of ideas and images that emerge. And prison reform is in part a matter of clarifying the objective of prisons and how best those goals can be achieved. So going into it, prisons, are places where people are sent as punishment for wrongs they have committed against society. It may be a violent offense. It could be a property crime, drug-related crimes, and other crimes. But they have violated some rules, and that is why they're there. So the original intent was punishment and pure punishment. In fact, in the old days, they would make it very gruesome and would make people watch executions and so forth. And that the point of that was to show the king's power, and the king's power in sense of king's laws, that you don't disobey the law. The state is omnipotent or omnipotent, and it can punish you. And it was to sow fear. It was to sow fear in the hearts and minds of individuals so that they would be deterred from committing further crime. And that notion, that basic limbic instinct to get revenge or to strike back exists at a societal level, and that's what prisons were created for, and as punishment. But so that's one view of prisons. The other is that this is a place where you send people to get better, to improve, to learn and correct their behaviors. Hence, the name of the department is often Department of Corrections. So these corrections departments or prison systems have molded their views also, and they do focus on rehabilitation. So that's the complexity of this whole thing. It's in part punishment and in part a humanitarian attempt at rehabilitating these individuals. So prisons work in different fashions depending on the degree to which these different factors are emphasized. In the most brutish prisons, there is no account for any compassion or leniency. It's all punishment all the way. And to the other side of the more enlightened view of correctional facilities are the European countries. Norway leads the way, and the way you measure whether a system is effective or not is the rates of recidivism, the number of people that reoffend or come back into the prison. That's the recidivism, and the percentage rates for Norway is around 20%. Whereas compared here in the United States, it's 60 to 80%. So basically, we're not doing things to prevent reoffenses, or we're not teaching them as well as the Nordic countries and Germany and some other countries. They're doing a better job of rehabilitating their prisoners. So what is involved in this rehabilitation? Ideally, you want to adopt the best practices that we have now, that we have witnessed. Norway is not Oakland, and and it has a small population, but the idea still works. Even though it may seem that there are different ideas in different places, it does work here as well if you try it. So. That is the understanding that needs to take place, that there are things that already work, and how can we implement them. The idea in Norway is to treat prisoners as as normal people, give them respect, dignity, then expect them to behave as decent citizens. They're allowed to live in open areas and allowed their own room, table, chair, all of that, a kitchen. They get to cook in a common kitchen area, and they attend groups. The remarkable thing about that place is that the officers, the COs, act as mentors and guides, and they have training in psychology and the social sciences. So they're adept at handling a lot of the things that mental health professionals do. So you can call them as sort of, mental health officers as well. So it's a dual combined role, and that's the kind of personnel that you need to cultivate in order to accomplish the rehabilitation goals. Because these individuals will act as guides, and people conform to behavior, to authority behavior, modeled behavior that they see as a positive thing and which they want to create in their own life. So that model works. I think we need to adopt more of that. And then we have AI coming in, and there's kind of a toss-up as to how it will affect prisons, but there are some potential ways, positive ways we could utilize it. We could have it take care of a lot of the administrative paperwork in which the staff spend a lot of time, COs especially, which would free them up to actually engage with the inmates and to interact with them in the Norway model. And AI could also be used to better screen for contraband, such as drugs, weapons, telephones, whatever that comes in. It could do a better job of it. It could even surveil for any aerial drops in the yards or anything, and trace the source of it, and remedy that very quickly. So it will stabilize. It could be a very useful adjunct to what we do, what is done in the prison systems. So when the inmates come in, they go through a transitioning phase where they're screened for any learning deficits, for any medical illnesses, any infestations such as lice, scabies, what have you. And they go through this process, and when they come from the jails. So the person goes to jail, he goes through trial, awaits sentencing, while either on bail or while sitting in the jail. The sentence is carried out, they're given a sentence, and at that point they go to the prison to serve out their sentence. And these prisons, before they are assigned to prison, they go into these transitional zones where they're go through this process that I was describing. They're screened for any medical illness or mental illness, and then their prisons are assigned accordingly, according to what best meets their needs. Sometimes if they're have a medical condition, certain places cannot be sent because there's a fungus that grows there, and it might, if they belong to a certain ethnicity, like if they're Filipino or black or immunocompromised, then you don't send them to institutions where that infestation or that cryptococcus cocci, they call it, that is prevalent, and so that goes into the determination of where the prisoners are assigned. And I think this model goes around the world like that. There's a screening process, and then they're assigned to the respective zones. So once they get there, then that process can identify people with any learning problems and their educational deficits, vocational deficits. Those should be ideally identified, which is not the case ideally happening in all places. But in a good system, you would identify their educational needs and their vocational skills that they have and skills that they might improve upon, or they indicate an interest in furthering. That would be one way to make a program, rehabilitation program for them. And it should be a real program. It should be like a college course or something. which they learn skills, and if they have mental health issues, they would be referred to mental health. And mental health would assign them a therapist, a psychiatrist if they need them, and they would be offered those services as well. The prison system has a very good healthcare system, medical healthcare system, and in part that is because litigation has brought about awareness about the deficits that prevailed, and so the state has taken active steps to remedy those, and the system has improved. So they have very good access to good healthcare, but this is something that's not prevalent everywhere, and this is something that should be provided. And then with the AI, you could build, theoretically, you could build simulations of conflict situations or trauma situations. You could use it for therapy or skills training. They could have their individual therapist, that would work with them as a bot in their digital device, and they could learn and explore things about themselves that way. So at the end of it, we should be able to rehabilitate a lot of individuals. There's some that are incorrigible. Sadly, that is the situation. There are some people like that. But a majority of them, vast majority, are caught up in making wrong decisions due to impulsivity or intoxication or poor judgment or being around the wrong people. So a vast majority of prisoners can be rehabilitated and taught how not to reoffend and how not to violate the rules and laws of society. In fact, they could be very productive members, and add instead of subtract from the general welfare of the population. It is expensive to house prisoners, and to the extent that we don't need to do that, we'll be better off. So to end this, I think prisons are complex. They are places where true rehabilitation can occur. It can almost be a reawakening of the person into a new personhood that is more aware, self-aware, better informed, and able to lead a better life. Anyway, that is the hope, to get, not to just to cast these people away, but to actually try to save them and re-engage them in the stream of life. All right, I hope you're well. That was a lengthy video. I actually auditioned for a TEDx talk on this, but I don't think that's going to go anywhere. But still, these ideas are important, and I thought I'd share them. Basically, the point of this whole talk was that a lot of the people in prisons are not bad people. They're people that made mistakes, and we are all capable of making mistakes. And our religious faith tells us to, lift up the ones that have fallen down, and that's what we should try to do. And I think God and our own good conscience will be on our side. We'll create a better world for all of us. Right? Take good care, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.